SpaceX's Mars colony was always the great motivation for Starship development. But Musk now says he wants to build a self-sustaining lunar base before building his Mars city. It's the largest shift in plans ever for SpaceX. Are they dropping the Mars base? Why the shift in plans, and does this mean that Starships will not fly to Mars? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. So it's out! SpaceX won't go to Mars. That's it. It was all a dream. Give it 10 seconds. This is really good for video interaction. Alright, enough rage comments collected, so here's what really happened. This post was like a seismic event for the spaceflight community. Musk cancels Mars. Starship's a big lie. Some even have it on good authority that it was never meant to happen anyway. To be fair, the writings were on the wall for some time now. I even made and released a video last summer foreshadowing these events at least partly. Musk stated that SpaceX has shifted its focus. They've diverted resources away from a Mars colony and toward our closest neighbor, the Moon. But why did they do this? Why pivot to the Moon after saying for years that the Mars colony was the #1 goal? The reasons are rather simple, and we'll get to that in a moment, but first let's take a look at this new realigned plan. What's changing? Blue Origin posted this. It's a tortoise. And it's a hint at Blue Origin's company motto, Gradatim Ferociter. That is Latin and it means step by step ferociously. He's taking aim at SpaceX with this post, and there is a reason. There are currently two races ongoing in spaceflight. One is that of nations, with China racing the US to the Moon. The other focuses on the two largest spaceflight companies in the Western world, Blue Origin and SpaceX. And both races are heating up. In recent days, information has surfaced that Blue Origin is shifting resources. I mentioned it in the last episode. Blue Origin paused New Shepard to focus on Artemis. Eric Berger from Ars Technica has now reported that word is spreading about Blue Origin's potential fast track to the Moon. They've been working on Artemis 5. It's supposed to feature Blue Moon Mark II, Blue Origin's larger crewed lander, which will be capable of supporting longer missions on the Moon with up to 4 astronauts. And to test everything needed, Blue Moon Mark I, a much smaller uncrewed lander, is supposed to land on the Moon this year. But they've changed their plan. They want to be the chosen lander for the first crewed landing after more than 50 years, currently slated for Artemis 3 no earlier than 2028. But SpaceX was supposed to supply that lander, the HLS Starship, right? That's where Eric Berger's reporting and Blue Moon Mark 1.5 come into play. Blue Origin would likely not be able to supply a Mark II lander for Artemis 3. It's large, capable, and meant as a permanent solution. So if they want to be the team to land the next astronauts on the Moon, they have to accelerate things. If this report is correct, and I do think it very much is, Blue Origin is already working on this smaller, less capable lander to be able to land astronauts on the Moon as early as 2028. Now, as so often, this decision has an upside and a downside. The upside is that two teams are now working on providing a lander for Artemis 3. This will undoubtedly provide redundancy and maybe even an earlier landing. It gives the US a greater chance at beating China to it, and for Blue Origin, it would be a huge headline. The downside is that it will most likely slow down the planned solution. Blue Origin's Mark II lander development will likely be slowed to free up talent and resources on Mark II for investment in Mark 1.5. And if Blue Origin wants any chance at beating SpaceX's HLS Starship, they'll need to start testing very soon. We'd need to see an uncrewed flight with 1.5 in 2027, which would mean that Mark I, the uncrewed test lander right now, would need to do its flight to the Moon very soon, and right after that, possibly just months, we'd need to see Mark 1.5 to have a realistic chance. And then there's Musk saying that SpaceX is pivoting from a Mars city to a lunar one. Is all this connected? Did he get the message and we're now going to see a smaller HLS Starship? Unlikely, even if Blue Origin sees it differently. SpaceX's goals for the Moon are different. Their goal is not to land astronauts as fast as possible. SpaceX's Starship HLS is simply too large for that. Instead, SpaceX is doing what they always planned for Starship. It's a heavy lifter. Its purpose isn't and never was to beat another company or another country like China to the moon. The goal of Starship development is to create a tool that enables humanity to build meaningful infrastructure in space. A Mars city, a self-sustained lunar base, and AI satellites. It all falls into the same category, mass to orbit. While Starship is often compared to other rockets by its height, engine count, or thrust at liftoff, the true metric for comparison is its ability to launch mass into space quickly. While its payload capacity on a single launch is absolutely staggering, the real metric lies in full rapid reusability. 100 or 200 tons on its own are impressive, but the important metric here is cadence. Imagine a rocket that can launch daily or even hourly. Then and only then does it become possible to build a Mars city or a lunar base. Musk wants to launch 10,000 Starships per year. That's the key difference and something a Mark 1.5 lander won't change. Which brings me to the initial question. Is Mars cancelled? The short answer is no. Musk stated that the Mars city is still very much part of the plan. But he also stated what I had thought for quite some time, developing something on Mars is almost impossible. All thanks to the so-called Mars alignment window, which enables us to transfer anything to Mars and back to Earth only approximately every 26 months. This leaves SpaceX with a hard-to-solve conundrum. We have a hard-to-solve problem too, but you can help. Take a moment to like and subscribe, and if you want to go the whole 9 yards and be a direct supporter, go to our Patreon page or become a channel member right here on YouTube. It's what enables us to do all this. Thank you so much, you rock! Here's SpaceX's hard-to-solve problem. I guess we can all agree on the fact that the technology needed to build a colony on Mars largely doesn't exist yet. Even when Starship is fully operational, they still don't know how to build that city on Mars. And that all comes down to fast iteration. All of SpaceX's developments are based on this strategy. Launch, watch it do its thing, or not, and learn from that. Then launch a new design in rapid succession. That's how you develop new technology. Starship is not just larger, it is largely new tech. But with a Mars transfer window that aligns every 26 months, that iteration process is slowed to a crawl. Alright, let's imagine this for a second. SpaceX is ready for that first launch to Mars. Cargo only, Optimus robots, and a first station design built for Mars. The rocket launches to Mars. Everything works out just for the sake of the argument. Then it flies to Mars. 6 months until it arrives, no data whatsoever. SpaceX is just waiting for its first version to make it to its destination. The one place where they can test it. Then they build it on Mars, see if it actually works, and then they have to wait another 20 months to be able to send improvements. Meanwhile, back on Earth, no one can work. There is no data, no way to iterate if you can't see the results. Alright, that's the Mars situation. Now let's take the Moon for comparison. SpaceX can launch anytime they want. A trip to the Moon takes roughly 2 days after refueling. Refueling won't be a large problem long term either. Musk stated that Starship version 4 will deliver more than 200 tons of fuel to low Earth orbit, reducing the needed 10 to 15 fueling flights on version 3 Starships down to 5 or 6 on version 4. Not a big problem with 10,000 Starship flights per year. And refueling can be stacked in low Earth orbit, so a Starship can leave for the Moon at least 3 times a week in theory. The flight only takes 2 days. Optimus can get right to work after landing. Results come in almost immediately. Conclusions can be drawn, systems can be updated, and a new design can be implemented all the time. Until the idea works the way SpaceX wants it to, that's the biggest benefit of starting with the Moon instead of Mars. Technology that will be absolutely vital on Mars can be developed 100 times faster on the Moon. So that makes a lot of sense. But does this mean that Mars is off the table? Not at all. What happens if SpaceX can develop the tech needed for a self-sustaining colony at 100 times the speed? Mars will be possible more quickly than without the lunar development. Another very important reason SpaceX wants to get to the Moon is economic in nature. A lunar base can accelerate off-planet production. AI satellites manufactured on the Moon will increase output immensely as they can be launched toward Earth using a mass driver rather than a rocket, since the Moon has far less gravity. SpaceX will be able to research tech much more quickly and raise capital in the process. As Musk stated on X, the Mars colony will likely not even shift its timeline. A flight to Mars is still planned for 2031 or 2033. A self-sustaining colony is still planned in 20 to 30 years. Musk stated that Mars will be done in 5 to 6 years and that the Moon will be done in parallel. Take those timelines with a grain of salt. The big difference is that SpaceX will now research the tech on the Moon first, while gaining the capital needed to accelerate the Mars project. This will also mean that we can see much more of it. We might even be able to travel there in our lifetime. The goal is to build a system that will enable anyone to travel to the Moon. Yes, now we're talking. Musk stated that SpaceX can build a self-sustaining lunar base in less than 10 years. The Moon has many advantages, we just need a new t-shirt, and it all depends on how well Starship version 3 performs this year. Let's see when we can expect the next Starship flight to happen. They've just rolled Booster 19 back to the production site. It is now back in its mega bay for analysis and for engine installation. SpaceX has just posted that Booster 19's cryotest campaign is finished. This is the first time a version 3 prototype went through it all, and SpaceX seems happy. The multi-day campaign tested the booster's redesigned propellant systems and its structural strength. Now comes the upper stage. Ship 39 is still inside Mega Bay 1 and it looks pristine. It has every part it needs and it sure looks ready for some cryo testing. I expect a rollout next week. Once that has happened, I am very confident that we'll see Starship Flight 12 take place in March. There is change everywhere, not just at SpaceX. If you want to see how SpaceX is doing at Starbase from the air just like Jordan does, visit redlineheli.com/Felix. $25 off for anyone using the link. The Redline helicopter team will show you the same Starbase views our photographer gets on his Starbase flights. Incredible views. For the first time in its short life, America's newest national security rocket is sitting on the West Coast. That may not sound dramatic. Rocket launches have become so normal by now, but it matters more than almost any rocket move in years. Earlier this month, United Launch Alliance quietly shipped a complete Vulcan Centaur rocket from Alabama to Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. No launch yet, no headlines, just hardware arriving by ship. And yet, this single move opens the door to something the United States cannot do without: launching its most sensitive military satellites into the orbits that watch the entire planet. This isn't about tourism. It's not even about Mars or the Moon. It's about whether the US military can keep its eyes open in space. The real magic is on top of Vulcan, not the booster. It's the stage above it. The Centaur upper stage has been part of America's spaceflight since the 1960s, but this version, called Centaur 5, is a complete redesign. It's wider, more powerful, and far more capable than anything ULA has flown before. Powered by hydrogen-fueled engines, Centaur 5 can coast in space for hours, restart multiple times, and place satellites directly into their final orbits. Now, that matters a lot more than it sounds. It ultimately comes down to fuel efficiency. For military satellites, every drop of fuel saved during launch can turn into years of extra life in orbit. And that can mean fewer replacement launches, fewer coverage gaps, and billions of dollars saved over time. This is the kind of precision the Pentagon cares about, and it is the real reason Vulcan exists. Vulcan wasn't built because ULA wanted something new. It was built because the old system collapsed. For decades, US military launches relied on two rockets, Atlas V and Delta IV Heavy. Together they guaranteed what the Pentagon calls assured access to space. The rule that America must always have at least two independent rockets ready to launch national security payloads. Then reality intervened. Atlas V depended on a Russian-built engine. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the supply became politically and strategically unacceptable. Delta IV Heavy, expensive and aging, was already retired in 2024. Suddenly, the United States was staring at a future with no guaranteed backup. Vulcan became the replacement for both. After years of testing, the Space Force certified Vulcan for national security missions in 2025, effectively saying we trust this rocket with our most critical assets. But isn't SpaceX already doing this? And what about Blue Origin? Here's where the story gets interesting. On paper, Vulcan looks outmatched. SpaceX's Falcon 9 is cheaper and reusable, with hundreds of flights under its belt. New Glenn promises heavy lift capability with a reusable first stage. Starship, a aims to eventually dwarf everything else, carrying massive payloads at radically lower cost. Against that lineup, Vulcan looks, well, a bit old-fashioned. The thing is that SpaceX and Blue Origin are young launch providers. ULA and the companies it's comprised of have existed for much longer. SpaceX's success and Blue Origin's New Glenn even more are relatively new developments. ULA had proven track record when contracts were signed, and that timing is what makes Vulcan very likely the last large non-reusable rocket. And why does the expansion to the West Coast change everything? Until now, every Vulcan launch has taken place in Florida. That works for many missions, but not the most important military ones. From Vandenberg, rockets launch south over the Pacific into polar and sun-synchronous orbits. These paths let satellites pass over every point on Earth, including the poles. That's essential for reconnaissance, missile warning, and tracking hypersonic weapons. Threats that don't politely approach from the equator. Florida physically cannot reach these orbits safely. Dogleg maneuvers are needed to avoid flying over Cuba or the Bahamas. And Vandenberg doesn't have that problem. The first West Coast Vulcan mission, expected later in 2026, will launch satellites for the Space Development Agency's Missile Tracking Network, a system designed to detect and follow threats in near real time. Without Vulcan at Vandenberg, entire classes of military missions simply don't fly. Vulcan may never be the cheapest rocket, it may never be the most ambitious, but it was the reliable choice before SpaceX and others revolutionized spaceflight. The hardware now sitting at Vandenberg is more than a rocket. It's a quiet reminder that modern power doesn't just live on Earth. It lives hundreds of kilometers above us. Rockets are becoming more important than ever. We are entering a whole new era, both for space exploration and for the human species. For 64 years now, we've known how to visit space. That is important. Visit space, not live outside of our own planet. We've learned a whole lot. We know how to launch rockets, we know how to orbit Earth, we even know how to land humans on other worlds. But there are hard questions that we still haven't answered yet. Can humans even survive, live, or even thrive in deep space, far from Earth, for years at a time, with no quick way home? Crew 12, the next mission to the ISS, is seeking answers to exactly that. 4 astronauts traveling to the International Space Station for what looks on paper like a routine 8-month stay. But this mission may decide whether Moon and Mars are truly within human reach, or whether they remain permanently out of bounds. This mission is all about survival and a vital piece of the giant puzzle we need to solve to become multiplanetary. For decades, space missions have worked on a simple assumption. If something goes seriously wrong, you can come home. But once a crew leaves Earth orbit, there is no emergency evacuation. No quick medical return. That changes a lot, especially since Elon Musk's latest posts make it perfectly clear. We are not talking about something that is decades out. A permanent presence on the moon can be expected in the next 10 years. Solutions need to be found, and fast. Crew 12 carries more than 200 experiments, all focused on one core problem: closing the gap between visiting space and living there. Nowhere is this more obvious than in medicine. One of the most striking experiments on this mission sounds almost mundane: making intravenous fluids. Let me take a guess, something you never thought about before. Things are different when you go off-world. On Earth, IV bags are cheap, disposable, and everywhere. In space, they are a logistical nightmare. On the space station today, astronauts keep a small reserve of pre-packaged IV fluid. That works because Earth is always one day away, but Mars is not. IV fluids only last 1 to 2 years before expiring, and packing enough to last a 3-year mission would add significant mass. So instead of bringing IV fluids along, Crew 12 will try to make them in space. They will run recycled station water through a purification system, package the purified fluid, and return it to Earth for lab testing. If it meets pharmaceutical standards, it means future Mars crews could manufacture critical medical supplies on demand from water they already recycle. Without that capability, long-duration human missions become vastly more dangerous. While this is just one small example, it shows how many things we need to reinvent as we move to the stars, and there are countless more problems to tackle. Medicine is one of the most obvious fields in which we need to make progress, but food is just as unforgiving. Right now, most space missions rely on pre-packaged meals, carefully balanced, calorie-dense, and shelf-stable. But nutrients degrade over time, vitamins break down. On a 3-year mission, that already matters. We need to learn to reliably farm off-planet. Right, Mr. Watney?
I'm gonna have to science the out of this.
We are about to take the first baby steps off our planet into the solar system. Up to this point, humanity has never attempted to put an outpost on extraterrestrial soil. This is about to change soon, and there are literally millions of small and big solutions that need to be found to make this all-important leap into the future a success. And that's it for today. Smash the like button, subscribe for more. This is what fuels the algorithm, and this is how you can help us for free. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. Our brand new Raptor emblem design and countless others are there for you to explore. Click the card or the US or worldwide link in the description. And if you want to know how SpaceX managed to build Raptor 3, the new Starship powerhouse, and what makes it special, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode.